A lot of political news as we head into the Labor Day weekend. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us. Ed, welcome. My question to you is, President Biden is campaigning in Pennsylvania and Maryland, but at this point we are not hearing about a visit to Texas to help Beto O'Rourke, presumably because of the president's low poll numbers. What do you make of that, and do you expect that to change?
It's part of it. The other part is that they're primarily focusing the president on those big states that often become battlegrounds in presidential election years that also happen, coincidentally, to have competitive statewide races this year. That means places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Florida, Arizona, Nevada. And so you're going to see the president spending a lot of time in places like that because not only are they competitive this year, but they're the kind of swing state that presidential candidates focus on in 2024.
Correspondent Janet Shamlian reported on the long lines of vehicles at the North Texas Food Bank and the growing need for help amid rising food prices. How much of an impact could this have on the midterms and how President Biden and Democrats campaign?
Well, look, the economy remains the top issue of concern for voters. If you look at the recent CBS News battleground tracker, it certainly shows that. And that's why you continue to see especially Republican candidates talking issues of dollars and cents, raising concerns about how inflation has affected people like those that were in those food lines, whether or not the president and congressional Democrats are doing enough to drive down prices overall. Democrats would turn around and say, look, the most recent numbers suggest inflation is easing. Gas prices have come down predominantly across the country. The unemployment rate's in pretty good shape. And, you know, while there may be concerns about the recession, they would argue that things are in pretty good shape right now. But you're also going to see Democrats instead try to focus on a lot of these other issues that have propped up to try to rally their base of support. That means a lot more conversation and focus on abortion rights, a lot more focus on climate change, gun control, issues that they know can help drive out more liberal or Democratic voters or left-leaning independents. Exactly the kind that Beto O'Rourke is going to need as well in Texas. Whether that'll be enough, though, of course, remains to be seen.
Well, that's the $64,000 question. I was going to ask you about that because polls show that Democrats have really galvanized around the abortion issue. And how do you think that that could blunt inflation in the economy as concerns at the polls?
Hard to know, but, you know, we've seen some of these recent referenda in Kansas. There was a special congressional election that was held in New York where suddenly more Democratic voters than anticipated were showing up, or more people were voting either against restrictions on abortion rights or for the Democrat who just spent a lot of time and advertising money talking about it. You notice also in Texas, Beto O'Rourke is running advertising now that calls out Governor Abbott's support for abortion restrictions. He's seeing the same polling Democrats are across the country, believing that perhaps there are enough women or independent voters out there, maybe even disaffected Republicans, who are concerned that Texas Republicans have gone too far. Is that going to work? Again, we don't know. But there is early evidence to suggest it's something that is motivating people in ways they've never been motivated before, simply because we've never seen this kind of action taken by the Supreme Court that can slingshot into an election just a few months later.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And you can be sure to see more of the latest political reporting tonight on CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell, right here on CBS 11 at 5:30 p.m.